The range was silent except for the steady breathing of the men watching her struggle with the heavy rifle. "Maybe this isn't for you," one sneered, cocking an eyebrow as she aimed. Her fingers tightened on the cold metal, eyes locked on the distant target. Then, bang, the bullet hit dead center. Welcome to Dignity Tales. Let's uncover what really happened. Sarah had always been the kind of person who kept her passions close to her chest. To most, she was just another face in the crowd, quiet, unassuming, blending easily into the background. But beneath that calm exterior was a restless fire, a longing that few could guess. She wanted to learn to shoot, not just with any gun. She dreamed of mastering the sniper rifle. Growing up in a small town, Sarah's days were spent working long hours at the local library and helping her aging mother. The idea of picking up a sniper rifle and hitting distant targets with precision seemed like a far-off fantasy, something reserved for soldiers or elite marksmen. Yet she was drawn to the challenge. The focus, the discipline, the stillness required. It called to her. Her first visit to the shooting range was a mixture of nerves and excitement. The air smelled of gunpowder and rubber, and the sharp crack of rifles echoed under the wide-open sky. Men there eyed her curiously, some with surprise, others with skepticism. Sarah ignored the sideways glances, the whispered comments about how a woman might never handle the heavy rifle. Her instructor handed her the weapon, its cold metal weight unfamiliar in her hands. She struggled to steady herself, fumbling with the scope and adjusting the rifle's stock. The target seemed miles away, a small black dot waiting to be conquered. She took a deep breath and squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide. "Maybe this isn't for you," a voice sneered from the sidelines. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she didn't respond. She only tightened her grip, determined to prove them wrong. This was just the beginning. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed that night, the weight of the day pressing against her chest. The jeers and doubting looks still echoed in her mind, but beneath the sting of embarrassment lay something stronger, determination. She wasn't just dabbling. This was a dream she intended to chase no matter what. She pulled out a worn notebook she'd kept tucked away for years. Inside were sketches of rifles, notes on shooting techniques she'd painstakingly researched online, and scribbled goals that felt both distant and possible. Tonight, she added a new line: join sniper training program. The next morning, Sarah called the local gun club, the voice on the other end polite but cautious. "Sniper training? That's pretty advanced," the clerk warned. "Most beginners start with handguns or rifles." Sarah nodded, though they couldn't see her, and replied, "I'm ready to work hard. I want to learn." Over the following weeks, Sarah immersed herself in books and videos, studying the mechanics of long-range shooting, ballistics, wind adjustments, and the patience needed for perfect timing. She started small, practicing steady aim with a scoped rifle at the community range, getting used to the rifle's weight and the kickback of each shot. Her initial attempts were awkward. The rifle felt heavy, her arms trembled after holding it for minutes, and her first shots were far from the mark. But with every miss, her resolve grew. She spent evenings walking through mental exercises, visualizing breath control and calm focus. At the range, the men who once mocked her barely acknowledged her now, some casting wary glances. Rumors circulated about the quiet woman who showed up regularly, staying long after the crowd had left. Sarah didn't seek attention or approval. Her only audience was the target, and her only measure of success was improvement. One afternoon, after a particularly tough session, Sarah packed her gear and looked back at the target, a small black that no longer seemed so daunting. She whispered to herself, "One day, I'll hit you dead center." And she meant it. The sun was high and harsh over the shooting range, casting sharp shadows across the worn wooden benches and the scattered brass casings littering the dirt ground. Sarah adjusted the scope of her rifle carefully, her hands steady despite the buzzing tension in the air. Around her, the usual group of regular shooters lounged, their eyes flicking her way with that familiar mixture of surprise and thinly veiled skepticism. "You really think you can handle that thing?" one of them asked, leaning against the fence with a smirk. His voice carried just enough to be heard by those nearby. Sniper rifles aren't toys. They take years of training, muscle, and guts. Maybe this isn't for you. Sarah didn't flinch. Instead, she let her gaze slide past him to the distant target. A small black circle pinned on a weathered wooden board nearly 500 yards away. The wind whispered through the tall grass, and the faint rustle was the only sound besides the occasional snapping of a rifle firing downrange. Her fingers found the trigger, the cold metal comforting despite the weight she carried, not just of the rifle, but of the expectations and doubts pressing down on her. She adjusted her stance, breath steady, heart focused. The world seemed to narrow until only she and the target existed. But the shot rang out, echoing like a challenge. The bullet thudded into the dirt a foot wide of the mark. A chorus of chuckles rippled through the crowd. "See? Told you," the man sneered. "Maybe stick to something lighter." Sarah's cheeks burned, but her jaw clenched tighter. Every miss was a lesson, every doubt a challenge to overcome. She refused to let their words become the limit of her potential. After the crowd moved on to other activities, Sarah stayed behind, picking up spent cartridges and cleaning her rifle. Her mind wasn't on the laughter, but on the target, on the next shot, on the distance between who she was and who she could be. Her journey was just beginning. The smell of gunpowder hung thick in the air as Sarah gripped the sniper rifle once more. Her arms ached from the weight, muscles unfamiliar with the strain tightening every time she lifted the heavy weapon. The cold steel felt both foreign and strangely reassuring in her hands, a tool she was determined to master. Her instructor, a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes and a patient demeanor, watched silently as she struggled to position the rifle correctly. "You need to steady your breathing," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "Sniping isn't about strength alone. It's about control." Sarah nodded, swallowing the frustration that bubbled beneath her skin. The rifle's recoil jolted through her body with every shot, sending shockwaves up her arms. At first, she barely made contact with the target, the shots scattering in a wide arc. But with each attempt, her hands grew steadier, her aim more precise. She spent hours at the range, repeating the same motions until muscle memory began to take hold. Adjusting the scope, calculating distance, compensating for wind. Every element was a lesson in patience and detail. The veteran offered advice, guiding her through the technicalities she had only read about before. Other shooters watched, some with curiosity, others with quiet disbelief. A few came over to offer tips, their attitudes shifting from condescension to reluctant respect. Sarah welcomed the help, but kept her focus on the target. Late one afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, she finally saw her bullet land near the edge of the bullseye. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Her chest swelled with quiet pride. For the first time, Sarah felt the faint stirrings of confidence. Maybe, just maybe, she could do this. The late afternoon light cast long shadows across the shooting range as Sarah prepared for another round. The familiar weight of the sniper rifle rested comfortably in her hands now, though it still demanded every ounce of her concentration. Each breath was measured, every movement deliberate. The distant target, a small black dot pinned against the weathered wooden frame, awaited her focus. Her shots earlier had been wild, scattered, uncertain, the bullet holes landing far from the bullseye. But today was different. Today, something had shifted. The hours spent practicing, learning to control her breath, steady her hands, and read the wind were beginning to pay off. Sarah took careful aim and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, sending a powerful kick through her shoulder. Time seemed to stretch as the bullet flew through the air. Then, a clean hit, just inches from the bullseye. Her heart pounded. She blinked, stunned by the sudden success. Around her, the usual group of men at the range had paused their chatter, their eyes narrowing in disbelief. A few exchanged quiet whispers, while others tried to mask surprise with guarded expressions. For Sarah, it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above the doubts and limitations others placed on her. The small victory was a spark, igniting a fierce determination that wouldn't be extinguished. With a renewed sense of purpose, she adjusted the scope and fired again. This time, the bullet hit even closer to the center. A faint smile tugged at her lips. She was learning, growing, mastering a skill that had seemed impossible just weeks before. But not everyone was ready to accept her progress. The sneers and whispers persisted, a reminder of the walls she still needed to break. Yet Sarah stood taller with each shot, her resolve hardening like steel. That evening, as she packed up her gear, she felt something new, the exhilarating promise of what lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but now, with each small victory, the impossible felt a little more within reach. The morning sun glinted off the polished rifles lined up on the benches, but the warmth of the day did little to thaw the cold reception Sarah faced as she arrived at the range. The men who had once merely cast skeptical glances now openly whispered and exchanged smirks as she set her gear down. The weight of their mockery was heavier than the rifle in her hands. "You really think a woman's got the patience for this?" one said, loud enough for Sarah to hear, his voice dripping with condescension. "Sniping's a man's game. This is about precision and nerves of steel, things you just don't see in most women." Sarah tightened her jaw, the sting of their words cutting deeper than any physical strain she'd endured. She could feel their eyes probing, searching for a crack, an excuse to dismiss her efforts. But inside, a quiet fire burned brighter than ever. This was exactly why she had come, to prove them wrong. Her focus sharpened as she took her position, scanning the horizon for the distant target. The wind teased the grass, whispering challenges that only a sharpshooter could interpret. Her fingers adjusted the scope, muscles steadying despite the tension gripping her chest. Her first shot of the day rang out, clean and confident. The bullet landed squarely near the bullseye, a small but significant victory. Yet, from the sidelines, the snickers persisted. "That one was a fluke," a man sneered. "Lucky shot, but she can't do it twice." Sarah didn't respond. Instead, she reloaded, steadying her breathing, pushing past the noise. The second shot echoed through the range. Closer. The third shot hit dead center. A hush fell over the group. Eyes widened, disbelief flickering across faces that had so readily dismissed her before. Despite this, the undercurrent of mockery continued. It was easier for them to cling to doubt than to face the truth of her skill. But Sarah no longer cared about their opinions. With every shot, she was building something far stronger. Her own confidence, her own voice. By day's end, the whispers had turned to grudging respect. The journey was far from over, but the walls of mockery were beginning to crack. The echo of gunshots faded into the cool evening air as Sarah gathered her gear, her body exhausted but her spirit unbroken. The laughter and whispers from earlier still lingered in the back of her mind, but they no longer held the power to shake her. Instead, they fueled an inner fire, a fierce resolve that no amount of doubt or derision could extinguish. Walking away from the range, she felt the familiar ache in her muscles, the sharp sting of fatigue. But it was nothing compared to the weight she had carried in her heart when she first picked up the sniper rifle. Every bruise, every sore joint was a testament to her determination to master something that had once seemed impossible. Sarah knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The world she was stepping into was full of skeptics and naysayers, people who believed in limits dictated by tradition, by outdated notions of who could succeed. But she was determined to rewrite those rules, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been told they couldn't. That night, she pored over notes and diagrams, analyzing the wind patterns she'd struggled with earlier and reviewing her stance and breathing techniques. She set goals, each one a stepping stone toward precision and control. Failure was not an option. It was merely a lesson, a necessary detour on the road to mastery. Her resolve was more than stubbornness. It was a quiet confidence born from small victories and a deep belief in her own potential. Every setback was a chance to learn, every criticism an opportunity to prove it wrong. Sarah wasn't just training her body. She was shaping her mind, steel forging her focus and patience. She envisioned herself standing tall at the end of this journey, Rifle steady, eyes sharp, the target hit dead center. She knew this moment was far off, but she also knew it would come, because she had decided it would. The doubters and the jeers would be nothing but background noise to a voice that spoke loud and clear. Her own. The shooting range was long closed, gates locked and lights extinguished, but Sarah wasn't done. Under the quiet glow of the moon, she slipped through a side gate she'd discovered during the day, a forgotten entrance the night guard hadn't noticed. The world around her was still, wrapped in the soft hum of night sounds. Carrying her rifle carefully, she found her usual spot beneath a cluster of tall pines, with the moonlight filtered down in silvery beams. Alone, with no audience to judge or doubt her, Sarah felt a strange sense of freedom. Here, mistakes didn't sting so sharply, and progress was measured only by the steady improvement she could see in herself. She unpacked her gear, the familiar click of assembling the rifle comforting in the night's stillness. Her breath formed small clouds in the crisp air as she settled into position, eyes narrowing on the faint outline of the target shaped by moonlight. The usual distractions of the day, sneers, whispers, skeptical glances, faded into nothingness. Sarah fired the first shot. The bullet struck closer to the center than ever before. Encouraged, she continued, each shot sharper, more precise. She worked through the night, practicing steady breathing, muscle control, and the fine adjustments that made the difference between a miss and a bullseye. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Her arms trembled, but her resolve only hardened. She knew that skill wasn't built in comfort or ease, but forged in persistence through exhaustion and doubt. At dawn, when the first birds began to sing, Sarah finally packed away her rifle, satisfaction glowing quietly within her. The target was peppered with holes, each one a testament to her grit and determination. As she slipped back out the gate before the staff arrived, she smiled to herself. This was her moment, the private, quiet battle she fought each night, the foundation upon which her success would be built. No one had seen her tonight, but she knew the journey to mastery had truly begun. It was late morning when Sarah noticed him, an older man with weathered hands and eyes that held the weight of years spent behind a scope. He had watched her quietly over the past few weeks, never offering unsolicited advice, just observing her steady progress amid the snickers and doubts. But today, as she struggled with adjusting her scope for the ever-shifting wind, he finally approached. "Mind if I give you a few pointers?" he asked, his voice low but kind. Sarah blinked, surprised but grateful. "Please," she said. He introduced himself as Tom, a retired sniper who'd served for decades. His manner was calm, but his eyes sharp with experience. They moved to a quieter corner of the range, away from the usual crowd, where Tom patiently explained the nuances of wind reading and breathing control. "Sniping isn't just about muscle," Tom said. "It's about patience, understanding the environment, and controlling your body. You've got the will. Now let's sharpen the skills." Sarah soaked in every word. Tom showed her how to measure wind speed by watching the grass, how subtle changes in humidity could affect the bullet's path. He taught her to slow her heartbeat before the shot, to time her breathing between pulses. For the first time, Sarah felt a new layer of confidence settle in. The complicated technicalities that once seemed impossible to grasp began to make sense. Her shots tightened, and her aim grew more precise. Word spread quietly among the shooters that Sarah had Tom her corner, and the atmosphere began to shift. The whispers of doubt softened, replaced by nods of approval. Not everyone was convinced yet, but the tide was turning. As the sun dipped low that day, Sarah packed up her rifle with a new sense of purpose. With Tom's guidance, the mountain she'd been climbing suddenly seemed less insurmountable. And for the first time, Sarah truly believed she could reach the peak. Sarah's body was beginning to understand the demands of the sniper rifle, but her muscles still rebelled against the weight and strain. Holding the rifle steady for long periods tested her endurance in ways she hadn't expected. Her arms trembled after each session, and the ache in her shoulders was a constant reminder that this journey was as physical as it was mental. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling practice, Sarah collapsed onto a bench, sweat dripping from her brow. The rifle rested beside her, silent but unforgiving. She flexed her fingers, feeling the soreness that had settled deep in her forearms. Her instructor, Tom, sat next to her with a knowing smile. "Strength comes in time," he said, "but technique can save you from burning out." He showed her exercises to build the specific muscles sniper shooting required: core stability, arm strength, neck endurance. He emphasized balance and posture, teaching her how to distribute the rifle's weight evenly. Sarah began incorporating these workouts into her routine, pushing past fatigue with every repetition. She learned to listen to her body, recognizing when to rest and when to challenge herself harder. The physical struggle was more than just muscle pain. It was a mental battle against the temptation to quit, to admit she wasn't cut out for this. Each ache was a badge of honor, a step closer to mastery. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, her body transformed. She could hold the rifle steady longer. Her aim grew more unwavering, and the shots became less a test of strength and more a dance of precision. Her confidence blossomed alongside her endurance. Sarah was no longer the woman who doubted she could handle the rifle. She was becoming the sharpshooter she'd always wanted to be. The sun was just beginning to rise when Sarah sat at the edge of the range, a notebook open on her lap, and the morning light illuminating her focused face. She wasn't just practicing shots anymore. She was diving deep into the complex science behind every bullet's flight. The arc of the bullet, the effect of gravity, wind drift, humidity, these were no longer abstract terms, but crucial elements she had to master. Tom had introduced her to ballistics charts and taught her how to calculate bullet drop and windage. It was intricate, precise work, more math than muscle, requiring patience and an analytical mind. Sarah spent hours poring over formulas and charts, scribbling notes, and making adjustments to her shooting technique accordingly. At the range, she put theory into practice, adjusting her scope's elevation and windage knobs, fine-tuning her aim with each shot. The rifle, once a daunting instrument, was beginning to feel like an extension of her own body, responsive and reliable. The process wasn't without frustration. Calculations that seemed correct sometimes resulted in shots missing the target. Variables like sudden gusts of wind or subtle changes in temperature tested her ability to adapt quickly. But with each mistake came a new lesson. She learned to observe the environment carefully, watching the swaying grass, noting the direction of smoke from a nearby chimney, and sensing the shifts in the air. Her focus sharpened, her mind becoming as precise as her aim. Her progress did not go unnoticed. Fellow shooters who had once doubted her skills now sought her out, curious about her rapid improvement. Sarah welcomed their questions, sharing what she'd learned with a quiet confidence. In the stillness of early mornings and the hum of late afternoons, Sarah was building something powerful, a mastery of the technical side of sniping that would make her a formidable competitor. Mastering the sniper rifle was as much a battle of the mind as it was of the body. Sarah had come to understand that the mental demands were immense. Focus, patience, and calm under pressure were essential. Even the best aim and technique meant little without the right mindset. Her mentor, Tom, often reminded her, a sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, it's the mind. You have to be still, patient, and aware. Distractions are the enemy. Sarah began practicing meditation and breathing exercises to control her nerves and maintain concentration. Each session at the range started with moments of silence, steady breaths, and clearing her mind of doubts and distractions. During practice, she visualized the entire shot process, from raising the rifle to pulling the trigger and watching the bullet find its mark. This mental rehearsal helped her stay composed when the pressure mounted. She also learned to embrace the waiting, the stillness that could last minutes or hours before a perfect shot. The world around her blurred, and she became attuned to subtle changes, the slight breeze, a bird's flutter, even her own heartbeat. Setbacks challenged her resolve. Moments when her focus wavered and shots missed the mark threatened to undermine her confidence. But with each failure, she reminded herself that control over the mind came with practice and persistence. Her growing mental strength became evident in competitions and practice sessions alike. When others rushed or flinched under pressure, Sarah remained calm, measured, and deliberate. This newfound patience carried her forward, transforming her into a shooter who didn't just rely on skill, but on unwavering mental discipline. Word of Sarah's progress had quietly spread through the local shooting community, stirring a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Few expected the quiet woman who had once struggled with a rifle to now speak confidently about her skills and techniques. So when the announcement came that a regional marksmanship competition would be held at the range, Sarah knew this was her moment to step out of the shadows. The competition promised to be tough, a series of challenging tests designed to push shooters to their limits. Long-distance shots, rapid-fire sequences, and precision challenges would test both skill and nerves. For Sarah, it was more than just a contest. It was the chance to prove to herself and others that she belonged in this world. When she registered, she noticed the skeptical glances from some competitors. The men who had once laughed at her presence now eyed her with guarded curiosity, whispering doubts about whether she could endure the pressure. Sarah felt the weight of their expectations, or rather, their disbelief. Training intensified in the days leading up to the event. Sarah pored over every aspect of her preparation, from the physical demands to the mental focus required. She refined her breathing, practiced calculating wind drift under varied conditions, and rehearsed her calm, deliberate shooting style. On the morning of the competition, the range buzzed with energy. Shooters adjusted their scopes, whispered last-minute strategies, and warmed up with careful shots. Sarah's heart pounded, but she remained centered, recalling her training and the countless hours she had invested. The first challenge loomed ahead, a long-distance shot that had claimed the nerves of even the most seasoned marksman. Sarah steadied her breathing, lifted her rifle, and prepared to face the moment that could define her journey. The crowd gathered quietly as Sarah took her place at the firing line, the long-distance target looming far beyond. The tension in the air was palpable, every eye watching, waiting to see if the underdog could hold steady. Whispers floated around her. "She's out of her league," some muttered. "This isn't a game for beginners." Even those who'd quietly admired her progress now seemed uncertain. Sarah could feel the weight of their doubt pressing down on her chest. The familiar nervous flutter threatened to rise, but she pushed it aside. She was no longer the unsure novice. Every breath, every moment of practice had led here. She raised the rifle slowly, the cold metal grounding her. The wind teased the grasses, a subtle challenge she'd learned to read. She adjusted her scope carefully, fingers steady. A deep breath, a moment of stillness, then the trigger. The shot cracked through the air. Silence. The bullet landed just inches from the bullseye. Murmurs of surprise spread, eyes widening. Some competitors exchanged glances, their confidence shaken. Sarah felt a flicker of pride, but kept her expression calm. The next shots followed, each closer, more precise. Her focus was unyielding, the doubts around her fading into the background noise. Yet inside, a flicker of old fear lingered, the fear of failing when it mattered most. But she refused to let it control her. As the round ended, the judges conferred, and Sarah stood quietly. The weight of expectation lifted just enough to breathe. She had silenced some voices today, but the journey was far from over. The competition had officially begun, and the firing line was charged with tension and anticipation. Sarah stood among seasoned marksmen, many with years of experience and accolades behind them. Yet here she was, the underdog, holding her sniper rifle with quiet determination. The first round were designed to test accuracy at various distances, each shot demanding precise calculations of wind, elevation, and timing. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she took position for her first shot. The crowd watched in silence, some curious, others skeptical. She focused on her breathing, steadying her hands against the rifle. The target, a small black circle, seemed to shrink and expand with her pulse. She adjusted her scope, recalling the countless hours of practice, the mental exercises, the technical mastery, the physical training. Her finger pressed the trigger, and the rifle cracked sharply. The bullet hit the target squarely, a clean shot that earned a murmur of approval. Encouraged, Sarah moved through the next few challenges with increasing confidence, each hit building momentum. But not all were ready to accept her rising success. Whispers of surprise mixed with disbelief. Luck, some muttered. Beginner's chance. Despite this, Sarah kept her gaze forward, tuning out the distractions. She relied on her preparation and resolve, letting each successful shot reinforce her belief in herself. The competition grew more demanding with every round. Targets at longer distances, tricky angles, and timed shots pushed her limits. Sweat beaded on her brow, and her muscles ached, but she refused to let fatigue break her focus. Between rounds, she caught glimpses of the crowd, some faces now showing respect, others still doubtful. The shift was subtle but real. By the end of the early stages, Sarah found herself advancing steadily, surprising even the most seasoned competitors. The once quiet woman was now a contender. Though exhaustion tugged at her body and nerves fluttered faintly, her spirit soared. This was more than a competition. It was a proving ground, a testament to perseverance and courage. She knew the hardest tests were still ahead, moments that would define not just her skill, but the strength of her resolve. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the range as the competition reached its most intense phase. Sarah stood at the firing line, her heartbeat steady but loud in her ears. The crowd had grown, a mix of eager spectators and seasoned shooters, all watching as the moment everyone anticipated finally arrived, the critical long-distance shot. The target was placed nearly 1,000 yards away, a tiny black dot against a backdrop of rolling hills and tall grass. The wind whispered unpredictable patterns, and the air shimmered with tension. Sarah's hands gripped the rifle with deliberate calm, her eyes narrowing behind the scope. For a moment, the world fell away. No whispers, no doubts, no expectant gazes. Only the rifle, the target, and a breath steadying within her lungs. Years of practice, moments of failure, and bursts of triumph had led to this exact instant. Her mind raced through calculations, bullet drop, wind speed, humidity, every factor she had painstakingly studied and mastered. Her finger settled gently on the trigger, and she exhaled. The rifle cracked sharply, the bullet slicing through the air. Time seemed to stretch, the bullet's journey a slow arc of hope and precision. Then came the impact, a near-perfect hit, the bullet striking dead center on the bull's eye. A gasp swept through the crowd, followed by stunned silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then applause erupted, hesitant at first, then swelling into a roar of admiration and disbelief. Sarah lowered the rifle, a small smile breaking through her focus. The moment wasn't just about the shot. It was a declaration she belonged here. Some competitors exchanged looks, the stubborn walls of doubt beginning to crumble. A few nodded, respect replacing skepticism. Inside, Sarah felt a surge of relief and triumph. The journey had been arduous, but this shot was proof that perseverance could rewrite expectations. Yet, even in the victory, she knew this was only a step on a longer path. There were still challenges to face, doubts to overcome, and skills to sharpen. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment, the shot that changed everything. The applause still echoed faintly as Sarah stepped back from the firing line, her heart pounding with adrenaline and relief. The critical shot had landed dead center, but inside, a new battle had begun, one fought not with a rifle, but with her own doubts and fears. For years, the voice of uncertainty had whispered in her ear, reminding her of every failure, every sneer, every reason she might not belong in this world of sharpshooters. That voice hadn't vanished. It lingered, pressing down beneath the surface even as the crowd cheered. Now, as the competition pressed on, Sarah found herself facing the toughest opponent yet, herself. She retreated to a quiet corner, closing her eyes and drawing in slow, measured breaths. The physical exhaustion was real, but the mental strain was heavier. The pressure to maintain perfection, to prove her worth again and again, threatened to unravel the confidence she had fought so hard to build. Images flickered through her mind. Early mornings at the range, the weight of the rifle in her arms, the sneering faces that doubted her. She acknowledged the fears but refused to let them dictate her. "I can do this," she whispered, a mantra steadying her resolve. One shot at a time. Her focus sharpened, recalling the mental training Tom had taught her: visualization, breathing control, embracing patience. She reminded herself that mistakes were part of the journey, not a mark of failure. Returning to the line, Sarah lifted her rifle, the familiar weight grounding her. The next targets awaited, demanding the same precision and calm she had cultivated. With each breath and steady aim, she wrestled the inner turmoil, transforming doubt into determination. The crowd watched as Sarah, once underestimated and dismissed, became a symbol of quiet strength, a reminder that the fiercest battles are often fought within. In this moment, Sarah wasn't just a competitor. She was a warrior, conquering the shadows inside her mind, one shot at a time. The range was quiet except for the soft rustling of leaves and the faint crack of distant rifles. Sarah settled into position, the sniper rifle cradled in her arms like an old friend. The long-distance target before her looked tiny, just a small black circle etched against the fading daylight. The stakes were high. This shot could make or break her entire journey. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing deeply to steady her nerves. Years of training, late nights, and countless missed shots had led to this moment. Her mind swept through every lesson learned: the arc of the bullet, the pull of gravity, the dance of the wind. Opening her eyes, she focused on the target, adjusting her scope with practiced precision. Her heartbeat slowed as the world around her narrowed to just the rifle and the distant mark. The muscles in her arms and shoulders held steady, no tremors, no hesitation. Her finger gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked, the sound sharp and sudden in the quiet. The bullet flew, a whisper against the wind. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as it hurtled through the air, finally striking the target with perfect precision, dead center on the bull's eye. A gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. Eyes widened in disbelief and admiration. Whispers turned to cheers. Some shooters clapped slowly, nodding in respect to the woman who had been written off from the start. Sarah exhaled, a smile tugging at her lips. The victory wasn't just in the shot, but in every moment that had brought her here. The doubts, the struggles, the endless hours of practice. She felt the weight of the journey lift from her shoulders, replaced by a quiet confidence that radiated from within. But this shot was not the end. It was a powerful beginning, a testament to resilience, courage, and a refusal to be defined by others' expectations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah lowered her rifle, ready for whatever came next, knowing that she had earned her place. The echo of Sarah's perfect shot still hung in the air as the crowd slowly absorbed what had just happened. For a moment, there was silence, stunned, breath-held silence, as if everyone needed time to process the reality before them. The small black, that had seemed so far away, was now pierced dead center by a bullet from the hands of a woman many had doubted. Then, the silence broke. First came the tentative claps from a few spectators, their applause hesitant but growing in strength. More hands joined, swelling into a chorus of cheers and whistles that echoed across the range. Faces lit up with a mixture of surprise, admiration, and respect. Sarah felt their eyes on her, not with skepticism or doubt, but with genuine acknowledgement. Some of the competitors, those who had whispered behind her back or openly mocked her earlier, exchanged awkward glances. A few nodded their heads in grudging respect. Others approached quietly, offering words of congratulations and encouragement. "You've got skills," one said, extending a hand. Yet, amidst the applause, there were still a few holdouts, those who clung stubbornly to their disbelief. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered under their breath. "Can she do it again?" But their words were drowned out by the overwhelming support from the crowd. Sarah's smile grew as she felt a new sense of belonging. The journey had been long, and the road still stretched ahead, but this moment was hers. She wasn't just a quiet woman trying to prove herself anymore. She was a sharpshooter, a competitor, and a symbol of perseverance. She looked around at the faces, at the mix of admiration and surprise, and knew that her success had already begun to change minds. It was proof that dedication and heart could break down barriers and rewrite expectations. As the sun began to set, bathing the range in a warm glow, Sarah felt a quiet pride swell within her. The shot had been perfect, but the true victory was the respect she'd earned, respect that no one could take away. The evening air was thick with the scent of grass and gunpowder as the competition moved forward, the sun dipping low behind the distant hills. Sarah stood quietly, the weight of her rifle familiar now, her hands steady but alert. The perfect shot had marked a turning point, not just in the contest, but in how she was seen. For weeks, she had battled not only the mechanics of the rifle, but the stubborn prejudice of those around her. Men who had sneered at her early attempts now approached with cautious respect. It was subtle at first, a nod here, a quiet word of advice there, but meant everything. During a break, one competitor, a seasoned marksman named Paul, approached her with a serious expression. "You've got grit," he said, extending a hand. "Most wouldn't stick it out after the way you started. You earned your place here." Sarah accepted the handshake, feeling a warmth that was both humbling and affirming. The journey had been grueling, the doubts sharp, but moments like this made it worthwhile. Not everyone was ready to admit defeat, of course. A few still whispered behind her back, clinging to old biases, but their voices were losing power. Sarah's quiet strength and skill were reshaping perceptions. The competition continued, each round demanding more precision, focus, and calm. Sarah drew on her growing confidence, her mind clear and steady despite the mounting pressure. Her shots were consistent, each one a testament to hours of practice and mental training. By the end of the day, Sarah had advanced further than many had expected, her name quietly spoken with a mixture of admiration and surprise. The grudging respect from her peers was a hard-won prize, but a meaningful one. She knew the journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges, doubts to face, and skills to sharpen. But standing there, with the rifle resting lightly in her hands and the setting sun casting a golden glow, Sarah felt ready. For the first time, she saw herself not just as a learner, but as a sharpshooter who had broken through barriers, a quiet victory with a roar beneath the surface. Word of Sarah's remarkable performance at the competition quickly spread beyond the range, capturing the attention of local media and shooting enthusiasts alike. What began as whispers turned into headlines. "Underdog sniper shocks the field," and "Quiet woman's aim speaks louder than doubts." Reporters arrived at the range the next day, cameras poised and microphones ready, eager to hear the story behind the sharpshooter who defied expectations. Sarah, still humble and focused, found herself answering questions about her journey, the late nights, the relentless practice, and the skepticism she had faced. Her story resonated with many. Viewers and readers were drawn to her quiet determination, the way she had persisted through mockery and disbelief to achieve precision and respect. Social media buzzed with support, with comments praising her grit and inspiring others to challenge their own limitations. But with the spotlight came new pressures. Some questioned whether her success was a fluke, others speculated about her background and training. Sarah navigated these with grace, keeping her focus on what mattered, continual improvement and proving herself on the range. The newfound attention brought invitations to workshops, interviews, and even sponsorship offers. Sarah saw opportunities opening, doors that had once seemed firmly closed. Yet she remained grounded, remembering the early days when simply lifting the rifle had felt overwhelming. The media's interest also ignited conversations about women in shooting sports, the barriers they face, and the importance of inclusion. Sarah became an unexpected symbol of progress, her journey inspiring others to pursue their own dreams, regardless of doubt or tradition. Despite the excitement, Sarah knew that media praise was fleeting without results to back it up. The competition wasn't over, and she still had many targets ahead. Her commitment remained to the craft, to mastery, and to the silent, steady work that defined true skill. As the cameras packed away and the crowds dispersed, Sarah returned to the range, rifle in hand, ready to continue the journey that had only just begun. After the whirlwind of media attention and competition, Sarah found a rare moment of quiet to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. Sitting alone in her small apartment, the rifle resting safely in its case nearby, she allowed herself to look back, not just at the milestones, but at the challenges and doubts that had defined her path. She thought about the early days, when the rifle felt impossibly heavy and the target impossibly far. The sneers, the whispered doubts, and the moments when giving up seemed the easier choice. Yet, here she was still standing, still striving. Her mind wandered to the hours spent training, the patient guidance of Tom, and the slow but steady transformation of body and mind. Each struggle had taught her resilience. Every setback had sharpened her focus. Sarah realized that this journey was about more than just shooting. It was about breaking barriers, challenging stereotypes, and proving to herself that determination could overcome even the most entrenched doubts. She also recognized how much she had grown, not just as a sharpshooter, but as a person. The quiet confidence she carried now wasn't just about skill, but about self-belief, patience, and courage. Her reflections deepened her commitment. Success wasn't a final destination, but a continuous process of learning and improvement. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, moments of doubt, and tests of will. But she also knew that each small victory, each perfect shot, was a step towards something greater. Sarah smiled softly, a quiet strength filling her. The rifle wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of her journey, of persistence, growth, and the power of believing in oneself. With renewed determination, she prepared to return to the range, ready to face whatever came next with the steady hands and clear mind she had earned. Sarah's success at the competition and the media spotlight opened doors she had never imagined. Invitations poured in, from advanced training programs, mentorship offers, and even sponsorship deals from shooting gear companies. The once quiet woman who had started with shaky hands and doubtful eyes was now seen as a rising star in the shooting community. One morning, she received a call from a prestigious sniper academy inviting her to join their intensive course. It was a chance to learn from some of the best marksmen and women in the world, a rare opportunity that promised to hone her skills to a professional level. Sarah hesitated briefly, knowing it would mean leaving her familiar routine behind, but the desire to grow outweighed the fear of stepping into the unknown. She also connected with younger women interested in shooting sports, becoming a mentor and inspiration. Emails and messages flooded in from those who saw in her a symbol of breaking barriers and overcoming doubts. Sarah embraced this role with humility and enthusiasm, eager to encourage others to pursue their own dreams. Sponsorship deals brought new equipment, better gear, and financial support for competitions and training. But Sarah remained grounded, mindful not to let external success distract from the hard work that had gotten her here. She set new goals, competing at national and international levels, mastering advanced sniper techniques, and continuing to build the mental and physical endurance required for excellence. Despite the excitement, Sarah never forgot the early days, the sneers, the dismissals, and the quiet moments of doubt. Those memories fueled her drive to be not only a skilled sharpshooter, but also a role model for resilience and determination. As she packed for her first training session at the academy, Sarah felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The path ahead was challenging, but she was ready. Her journey had begun with a single shot. Now, it was becoming a lifelong pursuit. Sarah stood at the threshold of a new chapter, the echoes of her journey resonating in every breath she took. From the first hesitant grip of the sniper rifle to the powerful shot that stunned the crowd, her story was one of quiet determination, overcoming doubt, and defying expectation. Her journey wasn't just about mastering a weapon. It was about mastering herself, the mental battles, The physical challenges and the relentless pursuit of excellence had transformed her from a timid novice into a confident sharpshooter. Every bruise, every sleepless night, every whispered insult had forged a resilience that no one could take away. As she prepared to leave for the Sniper Academy, Sarah reflected on what she had achieved, not just the trophies or the headlines, but the deeper victories. She had rewritten the narrative that told her she didn't belong. She had shown that skill and courage are not limited by gender or background, but born from passion and perseverance. Her success had inspired others, opening doors for women in shooting sports and challenging stereotypes that had long gone unchallenged. Sarah had become a symbol of what was possible when one refused to be defined by others' limitations. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The rifle she carried was more than a tool. It was a symbol of growth and possibility. With it, she would continue to push boundaries, improve her craft, and support others on their own journeys. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities alike. Yet Sarah faced it with the same steady hands and unwavering focus that had carried her through every trial. In the end, it wasn't just about hitting a target. It was about hitting her mark in life, proving to herself and the world that she was capable of far more than anyone had imagined. As she lifted the rifle one last time before her departure, a calm confidence settled over her. This was her story, a story of courage, resilience, and the power of quiet strength. And it was far from over.